The arrogant arrival. The Korvath Empire had conquered 47 star systems in less than 3 galactic cycles. Their crystalline warships, powered by quantum cores that could harness the energy of dying stars, had never met a force they couldn't overwhelm. In the grand chamber of their flagship, the Eternal Dominion, Supreme Commander Zarvok studied the holographic display of their next target with 6 of his 8 eyes, while his secondary brain calculated invasion trajectories. Earth floated before him in pristine detail, a blue and green sphere wrapped in white clouds, orbiting an unremarkable G-type star in what the locals apparently called the Milky Way galaxy. The intelligence reports painted a picture that almost made him laugh through his breathing vents, a species that had barely managed to send primitive probes to their neighboring planets. Their fastest spacecraft still relied on chemical propulsion. Their most powerful weapons were nuclear devices that would barely scratch the shields of a Korvath scout vessel. "Tell me again why the Galactic Archive has this system marked with a warning beacon," Zarvok asked his chief intelligence officer Thymel, whose scales shifted from purple to orange with barely contained excitement. Thymel's 4 arms gestured at various data streams flowing across the chamber's walls. "The beacon is ancient, Supreme Commander, placed there over 200 cycles ago by a species called the Vorthak. They're extinct now. The warning simply says, deathworld species, approach with extreme caution. Our analysts believe it's outdated. The humans have shown no signs of interstellar capability. They still broadcast their communications openly into space using electromagnetic radiation. We've been monitoring them for half a cycle." Zarvok's mandibles clicked in amusement. Deathworld species were always given such dramatic warnings. But in his experience, they were simply organisms adapted to harsh environments, nothing that superior technology couldn't handle. And their military forces? Fragmented and primitive, Thymel reported with confidence. They divide themselves into hundreds of competing nations. Their largest military alliance, something they call NATO, possesses approximately 20,000 aircraft, most of which still rely on jet propulsion. They have no energy weapons, no force fields, and their space presence consists of a single station orbiting their planet with a crew of less than 10 individuals. The Supreme Commander's primary brain was already calculating the honor and resources this conquest would bring to the Empire. Earth's biodiversity alone would be worth trillions in the galactic market. The humans themselves would make excellent laborers once properly domesticated. Their adaptability to various climates was well documented, and their creative problem-solving abilities, while currently wasted on primitive pursuits, could be useful in mining operations. "Prepare the fleet," Zarvok commanded, his voice resonating through the harmonic chambers that amplified his authority. "We'll use Standard Protocol 7, demonstration of power, demand for surrender, followed by selective bombardment of military installations if they resist. I want this planet intact and its population mostly preserved. They'll be more valuable as workers than as corpses." 3,000 Korvath vessels began their journey toward Earth, their quantum drives folding space-time like origami. The journey that would have taken humanity's fastest probe 40,000 years took the Korvath fleet 17 days. As they approached the outer edge of the Sol system, passing the icy body humans called Pluto, Zarvok ordered his communications officer to begin broadcasting their demands for surrender. The response came faster than expected. Instead of the anticipated panic, pleas for mercy, or desperate attempts at negotiation, a single message was transmitted from Earth on multiple frequencies, in perfect Korvath linguistic structure. "Korvath Empire Fleet, this is General Sarah Chen of the United Earth Strategic Command. You have entered a protected solar system with hostile intent. You have exactly 1 solar hour to reverse course and leave our space. This is your only warning. Your compliance will be met with safe passage. Your defiance will be met with consequences you cannot imagine." Zarvok's scales rippled with indignation. The translation must be wrong. These primitives were threatening him. His fleet could turn their planet into molten glass with a fraction of their firepower. He opened a direct channel, allowing his image to be transmitted to Earth. "General Chen," he began, his voice deliberately condescending. "I am Supreme Commander Zarvok of the Korvath Empire. We have conquered civilizations that spanned multiple star systems. Your species has barely left your planet's gravity well. Surrender now, and we will be merciful. Resist, and we will demonstrate why the Korvath are feared across the galaxy." The response was a human female appearing on his viewing screen. She was smaller than he expected, with dark hair tied back in a simple arrangement and wearing what appeared to be a standard military uniform with no ornamental armor or energy weapons visible. Her expression was calm, almost serene, which unsettled him more than any show of aggression would have. "Supreme Commander," she said, her voice carrying a weight that seemed impossible for such a small creature, "I need you to understand something. Earth has been broadcasting radio signals into space for over a century. We've appeared weak, divided, and primitive. Do you know why?" Before Zarvok would respond, she continued, "Because we learned long ago that the most dangerous predator is the one that appears harmless until it's too late. You have 54 minutes remaining." The transmission ended. Zarvok's anger overrode his caution. These humans were bluffing. They had to be. He ordered his fleet to advance, weapons charging to half power, enough to make a demonstration without destroying the planet entirely. That's when Jupiter moved. What the Korvath had assumed was a storm on the gas giant's surface, the great red spot that had been observed for centuries, suddenly revealed itself to be something else entirely. A massive structure, larger than Earth itself, emerged from within the storm. It was a weapon platform, its surface covered in configurations that defied Korvath understanding of physics. "Impossible," Thymel breathed, his scales now flashing through colors so rapidly they began to strobe. "Our scans showed nothing. How could they hide something that massive?" Before anyone could answer, space itself seemed to ripple around them. The asteroid belt, which their sensors had dismissed as random space debris, suddenly came alive. Millions of what they had thought were rocks revealed themselves to be mines, automated defense platforms, and dormant drones. Mars, the red planet they had barely glanced at, opened like a mechanical flower, revealing a massive railgun that could have been built by gods. But the true shock came when Earth's moon rotated, showing its dark side to the Korvath fleet. The surface wasn't cratered rock. It was a single, unified weapons installation, covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. The patterns began to glow, and every Korvath on every ship felt their scales stand on end as their instincts screamed warnings their conscious minds couldn't process. "Supreme Commander," the navigation officer's voice cracked with fear, "we're detecting massive gravitational anomalies throughout the system. They're artificial. The humans have weaponized gravity itself." Zarvok's confidence shattered like crystal against stone. His tactical displays were showing energy readings that shouldn't be possible from a single system species. The humans weren't just defending their planet. They had turned their entire solar system into a fortress. General Chen's image appeared on his screen again, unbidden and somehow overriding their communication security protocols. "Supreme Commander, you have 30 minutes remaining. I should mention that we've been observing your empire for quite some time. Your conquest of the Altarian system was particularly instructive. We learned much about your shield frequencies from the recordings." The terrible truth. The first shot came from Earth's moon. It wasn't an energy beam or a projectile in any conventional sense. It was something that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions the Korvath couldn't perceive. It passed through the shields of the flagship's escort vessel as if they weren't there, and when it made contact with the hull, the entire ship simply ceased. Not destroyed, not vaporized, but transformed into a cloud of subatomic particles that dispersed into the cosmic background radiation. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Zarvok commanded, but it was already too late. The human weapons weren't following any rules of warfare the Korvath understood. Projectiles from Mars arrived at their targets before they were fired, causing paradoxes that made their quantum cores scream in protest. The defense platforms hidden in the asteroid belt released swarms of nanomachines that consumed Korvath hull plating and converted it into more nanomachines. But the psychological warfare, it was perhaps the most terrifying aspect. Every Korvath ship began receiving transmissions, not through their communication systems, but directly into the minds of their crew. The messages were simple, repeated in perfect Korvath thought patterns. You were warned. Leave now, or become a footnote in history. Thymel was frantically trying to make sense of the tactical data. Supreme Commander, these readings, they indicate the humans have had faster-than-light travel for at least 2 centuries. Their actual technological level is incalculable. They've been hiding their true capabilities from the entire galaxy. But why? Zarvok demanded, watching as another of his dreadnoughts was casually swatted from existence by a weapon that seemed to fire from Earth itself, bending space-time to reach its target instantaneously. Why pretend to be primitive? The answer came from an unexpected source. The viewscreen flickered, and instead of General Chen, an elderly human male appeared. He was seated in what looked like a simple office, surrounded by books made of actual paper, a primitive data storage method. He smiled, and something about that expression made every Korvath who saw it want to flee. Supreme Commander Zarvok, the man said, his voice gentle but carrying an undertone that suggested enormous power held in check. I'm Director Marcus Webb of the Terran Xenological Institute. We've been waiting for someone like you for quite some time. You see, humanity learned something important when we first detected alien signals 1.5 centuries ago. We learned that the galaxy operates on a simple principle: the strong consume the weak. Webb stood, walking closer to the camera, his hands clasped behind his back like a professor giving a lecture. We had a choice: announce ourselves, join the galactic community, and eventually face someone exactly like you. Or we could prepare. We chose to prepare. Every probe we sent out that seemed to fail, they didn't fail. They were mapping hyperspace routes, studying alien technologies, and establishing hidden monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. The human paused, allowing his words to sink in. We've watched your empire, Supreme Commander. We've studied your tactics, your technology, your culture. We know about the 17 species you've enslaved. We know about the 3 you've driven to extinction. And we decided that when you eventually came for us, we would be ready. Zarvok's mind reeled. This is impossible. The energy requirements alone for what you're demonstrating would be impossible if we were limited to 1 star, Webb interrupted. But we're not, are we? We've been harvesting energy from stars throughout the galaxy for decades. Dark matter, dark energy, quantum vacuum fluctuations, even the cosmic microwave background radiation. Everything is fuel if you're clever enough, and humans, Supreme Commander, are very clever when we're threatened. The space around the Korvath fleet began to distort. Ships that had been maintaining perfect formations suddenly found themselves scattered across light hours of distance. Others were pulled together, their hulls crushing against each other despite their crews' desperate attempts to maneuver away. You see, Webb continued, his tone becoming harder, humanity has a saying: speak softly and carry a big stick. We've been speaking very softly for a very long time. Would you like to see our stick? Before Zarvok could respond, Earth itself began to change. The blue and green surface rippled like water, and massive structures rose from beneath the oceans. Cities that had appeared to be normal metropolitan areas revealed themselves to be camouflaged military installations. The entire planet was a weapon, and it was waking up. We're detecting ships emerging from hyperspace, Thymel reported, his voice barely a whisper. Thousands of them. They're human ships, but the designs match dozens of extinct civilizations. Webb nodded on the screen. Ah, yes, those would be our friends. You see, we didn't conquer those civilizations, Supreme Commander. We saved them. Every species you thought you destroyed, every civilization you believed you had enslaved, we've been evacuating them, hiding them, training them. They've been waiting on the other side of the galaxy for this moment. The new ships were indeed crewed by species the Korvath had thought extinct, the Vorthak, who had placed the original warning beacon, the Zentari, whose homeworld the Korvath had stripped of resources, the Melorn, whose peaceful civilization had been shattered by Korvath invasion. They all flew human-designed ships, wielding human weapons, united under a single purpose. "This is Admiral Krentak of the Free Vorthak Fleet," a transmission came through. "Supreme Commander Zarvok, you destroyed my world 40 cycles ago. Humanity gave us a new one. You took everything from us. Humanity gave us the means to take it back." Zarvok's tactical options were evaporating. His fleet was down to less than half strength, and they hadn't managed to destroy a single human vessel. The weapons being deployed against them seemed to violate the fundamental laws of physics as the Korvath understood them. Ships were being aged to dust in seconds, frozen in temporal loops, or simply deleted from reality. "Please," Zarvok found himself saying, the word foreign and uncomfortable in his speech organs. "We surrender. We surrender." General Chen reappeared on the screen. "Surrender accepted, Supreme Commander. Your remaining ships will power down all weapons and prepare to be boarded. Your empire's expansion ends today. Every species you've enslaved will be freed. Every world you've conquered will be given the choice of independence or joining the Terran Alliance." "The Terran Alliance?" Zarvok asked, confused. "Oh yes," Chen smiled, and it was not a kind expression. "You see, we've been building our own interstellar community, one based on mutual defense and cooperation rather than conquest. Your attack on Earth was exactly what we needed to reveal ourselves to the galaxy. Thank you for that." The implications hit Zarvok like a physical blow. You wanted us to attack. This was all a trap." "Not a trap," Webb corrected, reappearing on another screen. "A test. The galaxy needed to see what happens to those who choose conquest over cooperation. Your empire will serve as an example, not destroyed, but transformed. Your technology will be shared freely. Your resources will be redistributed to those you've harmed. And your species will learn what humans learned long ago. True strength comes not from dominating others, but from lifting them up." As Korvath ships powered down their weapons and human boarding parties prepared to take control, Zarvok had one final question. Why? Why go to such lengths? Why hide for so long just to reveal yourselves now? General Chen's expression softened slightly. "Because we learned from our own history, Supreme Commander. We've seen what happens when the powerful prey on the weak without consequence. We've experienced it ourselves to each other throughout our history. When we reached the stars and found the same patterns repeating on a galactic scale, we made a choice. We would become the consequence. We would be the thing that empires like yours fear in the dark. Not conquerors, but protectors. Not destroyers, but the promise that any species, no matter how small or seemingly weak, has the right to exist free from fear." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Your empire fell not because we are stronger, but because you never understood true strength. You saw our divisions as weakness, but they taught us to appreciate diversity. You saw our conflicts as primitive, but they taught us to value peace. You saw our small corner of space as insignificant, but it taught us that home is worth any price to defend." The final message from Earth was broadcast on all frequencies, in every known language, to every corner of the galaxy. "This is the Terran Alliance. We are humanity. We are the species that turned a deathworld into a garden. We are the ones who looked at the infinite dark and chose to be the light. We stand with the peaceful. We shelter the defenseless. And to those who would prey on others, know this: we are watching, we are ready, and we are no longer hiding." The Korvath Empire's defeat took less than 3 hours from first contact to complete surrender. The news spread through the galaxy faster than light itself, carried by quantum communicators and hyperspace transmissions. The message was clear. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, not as conquerors, but as guardians. In the depths of space, on worlds far from Earth, species that had lived in fear of the next conquest, the next invasion, the next extinction, looked up at their skies with something they hadn't felt in generations: hope. The humans were real. The Deathworlders had kept their promise, and the age of unchecked empire was over. As for Supreme Commander Zarvok, he would spend the rest of his life in comfortable captivity on Earth, teaching human xenobiologists about Korvath culture and technology. He would watch as his former empire was transformed into a democratic federation, its military converted to a defensive force, its resources shared among all its member species. And sometimes, late at night, he would wonder if perhaps this had always been humanity's plan, if every signal they'd sent into space, every primitive probe, every appearance of weakness had been carefully calculated to draw in someone like him. He would never know for certain, but one thing became clear: the warning beacon around Earth hadn't been to protect the galaxy from humanity. It had been to protect the conquerors from themselves, because humanity didn't just defeat their enemies, they transformed them into something better, and that, perhaps, was the most terrifying power of all.